Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. This reading vlog is an exciting one because I'm going to be documenting the reading process. Let me prop you up. My very anticipated reading release. That's right, we're going to be reading the prequel of Priory of the Orange Tree. I personally liked Priory. I didn't love it. I did love the writing and the world building. I just felt the ending was a bit rushed for me personally, but I am excited for the prequel because, again, I already know I love the world and I do enjoy Samantha Shannon's writing a lot, so I'm hoping to be endeared to this new installment much more. That being said, it is literally release day, so I'm still waiting for this book to arrive, but I wanted to start the vlog and then maybe we can anticipate together because I feel like I'm just constantly looking out my window like hoping the postman will get here soon, but we'll see. We'll do an unboxing when it arrives, but in the meantime, I'm making lunch. But anyway, welcome to the start of this vlog. When the book gets here, we'll go into more detail about the series, I guess. But anyway, without further ado, let's hope I like this book. It's a long one. I think it's like 700 pages. So we're gonna be reading 700 pages in only a few days as well. So I have to stay focused. Now these are some good looking salads. Breadcrumbs are the new croutons. Just my opinion. Great news. It is 4 p.m. and my book was just delivered. So that means Matilda and I can sit right there and get to reading because I've got to get started right away if I'm going to get this book finished by the course of the end of this vlog. All right, are we ready for this beauty? I don't know if we are. Ta-da! I'm really excited for this. I'm going in with really positive vibes. Oh my gosh, this is really long. Okay, we're just going to see how far I get. No, I'm going to really try to finish it. This book is... wow, this is 800 pages long. You know, if this has to extend over the course of a week, it has to extend over the course of the week because we are gonna get this book read and I'm gonna document the entire process. I'm going to sit there and get started now because I need to jump in, you know? You know? Hi, so I have my cup of tea, my cozy blanket, cheers, and I'm going to start this book, but I feel like I want to give a bit more information about Priory and this prequel before jumping in. So technically speaking, this prequel can be read before or after the experience of reading Priory. So if you want to start the series and you prefer to read it chronological, you can definitely do that. But also you can read Priory first and then pick up this. Obviously this came out after, and that would give you a different reading experience, like whichever direction you choose to do, which I really like. I like that they're both kind of standalones. I like that you can adjust the reading order based on the experience you're wanting to do. Not familiar, the universe that this fantasy world is set in is basically a world besieged by fire-breathing wrens, I think that's how you say it. They're basically like evil dragons. And they all descend from a nameless one that everyone is working tirelessly to ensure that it does not reawaken and basically threaten the entirety of the world. This fantasy world has a lot of different fantastical kingdoms, and in the first one we had many different POVs from people living in these different kingdoms. You learn in one of these kingdoms they basically fear all wrens, they hate them, they're fearful of them, and as long as there is a descendant of one on the throne, they feel like this will keep the nameless one at bay. On the flip side of this, in another kingdom, they have a distinction. They hate fire-breathing wrens, they fear them, but they actually worship the earth and water-based wren that also still exist in this realm. So there's magic, there's religion, there's politics. My favorite part of Priory was the politics and the characters. I thought it was super interesting, and these different kingdoms I thought were pretty well developed. That being said, I'm especially excited to pick up this prequel because, according to the author, this one is not just longer, but much more political. And if there's one thing we know about me, I love a hyper-political fantasy story, so I'm excited to pick this book up. I think it's going to be pretty good. I also know it has a lot of queer relationships throughout it, which I'm excited about, and in general, I'm looking forward to getting back into this world, get a fresh perspective of what's going on, and maybe reading this will make me want to reread Priory and kind of experience the chronological journey that that could offer. But nevertheless, time to get started. Hello, I've read 75 pages, though it really does not look like much, and I'm really liking this book. It feels and reads like a great tale. Obviously it's a long fantasy book, so that tracks, but it just has this weight to it that makes it feel like a story that has been like passed through time in some regards, and tale and folklore is a very central part of this book in itself in terms of the origin of the religion and the philosophies of these different kingdoms that are presented to us. The story itself opens with 3 births and 3 different kingdoms: Kingdom of the East, West, and South. We then jump forward in time, and we are now reading from the perspectives of all of these girls who were born at the beginning of this book. And I'm very much in the early days of the story, and to be honest, not very much has happened. We're slowly introduced to them, their life, who they are, what they do, their personalities, and very clearly things are going to spiral, and I'm sure there's going to be an interconnectedness and fate that's going to be happening between these girls and these 3 kingdoms. I'm really liking the writing style. It's definitely, I can tell it's going to be very political. I like how it's written. It's very classic. It's very methodical, which I'm liking. And I also love that each of the kingdoms that are presented, and I really shouldn't say, it's not even 3 kingdoms, it's like 2 kingdoms and then kind of a compound, if you will. All are comprised of different cultures, different religion, but everything ties back to the Wrens and their interpretation and their experience through time with Wren, which I think is really interesting. Like they all have the same flashpoint, but how that was interpreted and how their cultures then transformed through the centuries are all very, very different. And I just really like how Samantha Shannon is kind of like highlighting that. I plan to read more tonight, obviously. I want to get maybe 150 pages in tonight. I think that's like a decent amount, given how much I need to read over the course of the next few days. But I'm really liking it. I'm going faster and faster as I go along. The first 75 pages were very excellent. And I like the girls so far. Quite a bit. They're very interesting, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. One thing is being made right now, and that, friends, is, ready for the dramatic flourish, vodka sauce. Ooh, that was a little less dramatic than I was anticipating, but this is so yummy. There it goes. Gotta deglaze this pan. Well, that color is looking much better, and now to add the pasta in. Dinner is served. Clay is back from his t-ball. No, not t-ball. Softball. T-ball. He brought me back a milkshake. Clay and I have started a co-op farm, and I just played like hours of this game. It's so addicting and it's so much fun. I'm so excited to be playing Stardew again. Oh, 10 out of 10. Alrighty, it's time to make a bit more of a dent to what I've already made. It's like, I love a book where it takes a while for you to see or feel any true progress. Good morning, everyone. I'm gonna take this last dregs of this coffee because I'm gonna need the fuel to get through some more pages of my book. So we got a lot of ground to cover today, everyone. Great news. I've just passed, oh, you can't tell from that angle. I've just passed the 200 page mark, and I would say I'm past the exposition, like the setup, and things are starting to get spicy. And I have to also say, if there's one thing Samantha Shannon has just gotten better and better at, like every book I've read of her, she's always been good at it, and every book I feel like she exceeds herself, if that makes sense, is world building. I love the amount of time she takes introducing, setting up the characters, setting up the worlds, their feelings before we kind of move into the larger plot movements. And this book has a lot of characters. We're in a lot of locations. And I just feel like she really allows us to get settled within everything. And then the pacing is just nonstop. Even the exposition pacing is really, really fast in the way that you don't want to stop reading. But I appreciate the time she takes. But let's chat about it a bit, should we? So again, we are in a variety of kingdoms, and we actually are now in the north. So we're in north, south, east, west. In the Eastern Kingdom, we're introduced to one of our main characters, Dumai, and she has basically grown up in a remote, very, very cold mountain. She's a mountain climber. She lives there with her mother, the Empress, and like a few really close individuals. Her world has been very small. It's always lived in the mountains, and she has no interest in leaving. But at the beginning of this book, she realizes a legacy and a fate for herself that she really has very little control over, which kind of thrusts her into the heart of court politics. And again, I'm still at the beginning, but we're definitely going to see her learn and kind of have to insert herself in the Viper's Nest, if you will. and it's really interesting. From there, we travel to the west, and we're introduced to Glorian, who is the daughter of a long line of queens within a queendom. In her culture, basically, the rulers are connected to the Nameless One, and it's through their blood that keeps him asleep. So every queen always has one daughter, and there's also a lot of political responsibility, and her mother basically brought the kingdom back together after a slew of really corrupt queens. And Glorian is struggling with dealing with the expectations of being a ruler. She's having to start looking at political marriages, and there's just a lot of weight and expectation and lack of choice that she's just innately struggling with. From there, we travel south into one of the prioress-like groups, and these are like religious sisters. They have power when they consume this fruit. It's like a group of women, basically. Honestly, seems completely rad if you ask me. And we don't actually read from one of the point of views of the young women that live here, at least so far. We read from the perspective of one of the young girls who lives here, mother. So there's a character named Siyu, who's like a young woman, and she grows up. She's very rebellious within the confines of this place. She has two mothers and a birth father. And you read from the perspective of one of her birth mothers, and I love her. She's so empathetic. I just love her wisdom, her thoughts, her chapters are just so refreshing to read. And her love for Siyu as she goes on a quest to basically try to find her is like kind of the central storylines of her chapters. We have some other characters who are kind of set in the north and the west. A young man who basically is like a retainer to the king of the north, but also has family and connections into the west. And yeah, all these characters are kind of introduced to us. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of intersecting fates and lines. Obviously, we have the legacy of the Nameless One and the almost destruction of this world and the fear and everything that has to do with him possibly coming back. And there are rumblings of, you know, the current reality of like what is happening. I just think it's a really smart setup. It's going to be a lot of politics. It's like there is this unnamed, literally nameless one. There's this great force, this great evil that has been kept buried for a long time. And so the world continues to turn, and there's all these politics and expectations that are going to exist within this fantasy world, but there's still this looming threat. And the threat and the rumblings of it coming back intermixed the politics that have existed in the meantime. It's just going to be an interesting thing to see play out. I really like the writing. I really like the structure. It reads fast because basically every chapter almost ends with like a mini cliffhanger, and then we are moving to a new place. Like we jump between locations so much. And so like, you're like, oh, but I want to know what happens next. But now you're back to learn about the previous cliffhanger. So you're just jumping around, and it keeps you really turning the pages. And I also feel like the narratives so far are pretty balanced between the different locations, which I appreciate. But yeah, so far so great. Really liking it. I'm really hopeful that I'm going to love this book. I've always liked Samantha Shana's writing a lot. So far so good. 200 pages. I have a lot left, but I'm really liking it so far. Friends, I thought we'd do another get ready with me because y'all seemed to enjoy it the last time. Yes, I'm using the viewfinder as my mirror currently. It's also March 1st. Happy first day of a new month. Which also means it's the first day of International Women's Month. In honor of that, I thought I'd share just an interesting little factoid I learned recently, which kind of blew my mind, to be honest. So did you know that it wasn't until 1993 that women were required to be a part of clinical trials for medicine? Yeah, unless it was for like a specific reproductive purpose, women were, generally speaking, not necessarily required to be a part of clinical trials for drugs, which obviously naturally would make men the medical norm when we're thinking about things like medication. It wasn't until 1993 when the NH Revitalization Act was passed that it was basically required that women and minorities would be included within medical trials. But obviously it's going to take a long time for the medical community to catch up with these new regulations, not to mention a lot of the medicines that we use were designed before 1993, and it's just so bananas. Anyway, I learned this and it absolutely blew my mind. It also really highlights like the importance of representation in general, because obviously this wasn't a law until 1993. As more women and people from different communities become involved in politics, that's how we see like this stuff begin to pass, which I guess my call to action is to putting on my mascara, is to always remember to get involved in your local politics, in your communities, until we have equal representation, you know, at the government level, that we can start to see changes actually occur at a large scale. So it's important to remember to stay involved in local and national politics, especially as we do have elections coming up. So anyway, that is just my March 1st, happy International Women's Day thought. You know, it's crazy to think like it wasn't that long ago that, you know, women were not included in like so many things, you know, from not being able to open your own bank account, getting a credit card. All this stuff was like within my, for example, my own mother's lifetime. It feels like a million years ago, but it's really not. So we gotta stay on top of it, you know? That's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, I am officially all ready now, and I'm going to go read my book about women saving a fantasy world from destruction from both mankind and evil dragons. It's officially prairie dress season in Texas. Able to break out all of my ridiculous dresses, and I could not be happier about it. Making lunch. Lunch is served. I have made a cup of tea. I've decided I'm gonna go sit outside and read because it is actually so nice and it's not too like directly sunny, so I won't get sunburned. So let's go put the Crocs on, grab my book, get some pages read out there, shall we? These are not bad vibes. Millie is also here. She's trying to figure out how to jump on my lap, but we gotta prevent that from happening at the moment. We opted to pick up dinner. I got udon, vegetable tempura udon, and some sushi. Divine. Hi, dinner's been consumed. It was delicious, for anyone who was wondering. I owe y'all a reading update. I'm actually gonna go read more, but I wanted to mention I have read to the 250 page mark of this book, and I'm really liking it. So far, so good. I love the world building. I love the tension that Samantha Shannon was able to create. She gave us a setup, and then slowly there's just been the introduction of all of these like ominous and scary and world altering things that tie back to this evil. And then there's also like human folly mixed up into all of that, which creates this like this anxiety inside of you. Get past all the small stuff because there's such bigger stuff at play here. But anyway, working my way through this. I'm gonna go in bed right now, put a faux fireplace on and read more. First I had to take Millie out because she is waiting. Not because she needs to go to the bathroom, mind you. It's because she always gets a snack or a little treat at night after she goes to the bathroom. So she's like clockwork. She tries to go to the bathroom about 7 times after 5 p.m. to see how many treats she can get. Isn't that right, Millie? You guys ready for the concentration? Okay, catch. Oh, she missed. Well, we'll try that again. You get 2, Millie. You get 2 because you're on camera, so we need to impress the people. Catch. Ah, good girl. Guys, it's like 5:30 p.m. and I have failed to vlog absolutely anything today. It was just kind of a busy day. I do have like 2 clips. I did record a podcast episode. Cozy Club Season 2 is coming soon. We're podcasting. Monica looks a lot cuter than me. I'm still in pajamas. So I recorded that with Monica this morning. I'm like fully laying down. And then Clay and I got lunch, which was delicious. And I was able to read to page 331 last night, which is definitely good progress. I'm really liking this book. I'm really loving like the dynamic range of female characters present in this story at different ages too, which I appreciate. Like it's basically almost an entirely female cast, which I think is awesome. I didn't get to read any of it today. I feel like this vlog is definitely going to carry into the weekend, which is a-okay. You know, weekend reading vlogs used to be the central cornerstone of my YouTube channel, so I love vlogging on the weekend. So anywho, I'm gonna go for a walk. I need to make dinner. I do plan to read tonight, but I'm not gonna read probably until much later in the evening. So I will make up my lack of pages from today, tomorrow, and the next couple of days. Hello, let's have some coffee. You might be wondering, oh Reagan, is it the morning? No, absolutely not. It is Friday afternoon, but after a busy 2 days, this coffee, which is almost done brewing, is very well deserved. I'm gonna have it. We're gonna sit down and read. I have barely read in the last 24 hours, which is just sad because I'm actually really enjoying my book. So we're gonna sit, read, eat some Girl Scout cookies. Oh, yes. And I will do an update. And then obviously I'll be doing quite a bit of reading. Oh my God, I'm spilling coffee quite literally everywhere. I'll be doing quite a bit of reading over the weekend too. Hi, I have read to page 400 of this book. I just checked, this book is 846 pages. So I have a rather large chunk left, but I'm encroaching the 50% mark. And I'm happy to report I'm really liking this book. I kind of already mentioned that, but I really am appreciating the pacing, the intensity of the story, the range of characters we get to read from. Obviously, it's really centering different women in different kingdoms, but the age range is rather like diverse. Like we have a much older woman who's very established. I love reading from her point of view, Tanuva. And we have obviously Dumai in the Eastern Kingdom, we have Glorian in the Western Kingdom, and we have some other characters like Wolf, who I think is our only male POV in this entire book, God bless, who's kind of associated to the North and the West. I really just love the amount of culture and history that Samantha Shannon's able to create, and also how it all ties into this nameless one, and again all the different interpretations of it and how that has kind of evolved through time is super cool. I also would say all of these characters are all like embarking or having to confront incredibly difficult things. One is going on a quest to try to find her runaway daughter. One is forced to many are forced to take on the mantle of power that, you know, again, they never really had a choice in, like legacy and fate and expectation and all of that. It's good. And they're all gonna interact with it in different ways. Like all of these characters feel very distinct and different from one another, which I think is interesting. They're dynamic. They're not like the perfect, strong female character kind of thing. Like they all have their own flaws and passions and all of that stuff. There's also like a good smattering of romance. Like this is a great example of like fantastic subplot of romance. Like it is not even necessarily like necessary to the plot line at all. Like there's so much going on, but it's also just like a nice add, a nice add to the intensity, nice add to like everything else that's already sort of gripping me with this book, and also just realistic. Like people have a lot of different emotions, and you know, love and longing and desire are going to be a part of that mix too. Particularly, I think there's setup for enemies to lovers, but I don't know yet. I don't know, but I'm guessing. But yes, progress has been made. Clay and I are now gonna go run some errands. I think we're gonna go meet up with some friends and play some pool this Friday night. But fear not, I plan to finish this book, at least over the course of this vlog. There's no way this vlog is ending and I have not finished this book, so cheers. Happy Saturday. We've literally just been working on this deck all day. Also spent a lot of time just doing general cleanup as well. So we're feeling really good going into the rest of the weekend. It is much later in the day, and I'm going to sit down and start doing some reading of this book. My goal is just to read as much as I can, at least 100 pages per day. We have quite a bit of work left to do outside tomorrow, which is definitely going to take up a chunk of our time, but I'm just going to try to make sure I'm always prioritizing reading, which I'm going to do right now. So we're going to go. And this room, faux fireplace is gonna be put on. I'm gonna cozy up on my newly fluffed couch, love it. And we're gonna get some reading in. So, setting you down now, let's get to it. Past the 500 page mark of this book, you can finally see I'm past the majority point of this story, and things are getting bananas. I mean, again, this is multi-POV and we're kind of like all over the board, literally, geographically, like so much is happening. We kind of got this like nice, peaceful beginning, an introduction to characters, who they are, what they want, and then everyone's world has come crashing down in a variety of different ways, but all of them are incredibly overwhelming and very, very, very emotional. There's been a lot of reveals at this point. Some of them I guessed and kind of saw coming from the beginning. Some of them are just interesting and new. I also feel like the fleshing out of the mythology of not just the wrens and the dragons that exist in this world, but like their origin, their connection to like the earth. I really appreciate, again, this balance of like almost like spirituality and like this greater force in being, which again are these like giant monsters, and then frustrating human politics. I think right now my favorite chapters, I'm really enjoying the Western chapters with Glorian because things are just in such upheaval and chaos, and particularly her character is basically she's having to have an accelerated force of just kind of coming into herself and also take on a mantle that she's like so young for and trying to protect her people. Forge her armor, let's call it. But I think throughout this entire story, like Dumai and Truvian, like their chapters have also been fantastic. I'm particularly interested in the Priory chapters just because we have an understanding of who they are and like their origin and like their philosophy, but how it's all gonna culminate, I'm like not sure, and I feel like it's going to be rather drastic. And basically this book is just a bunch of people having to make really difficult decisions that doesn't seemingly like even work out. Or it's just like rock hard plays and I'm not even sure which direction you're supposed to go, you know? So anywho, I've read 100 pages. It's almost time to order dinner. I'm gonna go check on Clay, who's been in the backyard this whole time. And we're gonna order food. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. And I'm definitely gonna read more of this tonight, but now I'm going to watch reality television. The gang is all here. We're watching F1 qualifying from earlier today, because we didn't have time to watch it this morning, in preparation to going to a friend's house tomorrow to watch the first race of the season. And we're also ordering tacos. Should be a good Saturday night. We have now moved on to The Mandalorian. It's really Pedro Pascal's world and we're all just living in it.
Stop unless we get a safety car here.
Not even 11 a.m. on a Sunday and we've had a whole social outing. But obviously today is all about staining those two back decks. So wish us luck. Matilda enjoying the sun before we have to keep her inside because of all the chemicals. But for now, she's vibing on this nice Sunday morning or afternoon. I look disgusting. 5 hours later though, we finished staining our middle deck, which feels very rewarding. And this is something we don't have to do for like 3 to 5 years again. Thank God. So many decks to stain. So I'm gonna cool down, shower, spend the rest of the day and evening reading and vibing. Reward chicken nuggets, potato salad, mac and cheese, French fries, and we're gonna start a rewatch of Vanderpump because of the cold beer because of the Tom Sandoval cheating scandal. I am in bed and it's 7:20 at night. That's where we're at. I'm so tired of working out in the sun for so long. I of course have my book. Hello, we're gonna make some good progress. I'm tracking to finish this book tomorrow. That is my goal. But I want to read at least another 100 pages or so tonight, and then I think I'll be able to kind of quote unquote breeze through the last 200 pages of this book in the morning, and then in the evening tomorrow, breeze. I think it's going to be rather emotional and intense. It's good so far. I'm curious to see where like how it's going to end, given that it's a prequel and we also know how Priory ends. I'm interested to see like how she's going to set and like tee up the next book while also giving us an ending to this prequel story, which is set 50 years prior to the start of the next book. So I am interested. Reading will commence very, very soon, but first I'm going to play a little more Switch and watch a little more reality TV, and then I will be doing much reading. Hello, we're here for an update because I have passed the 600 page mark. I feel like I'm finally in the home stretch of this book. I have some thoughts. So first off, obviously, as I'm sure you've noticed through the course of this vlog, I am liking this book. I still have 250 pages left, so there's still, you know, there's still time for the landing to not be stuck, but I think overall it has been an enjoyable reading experience. Something I do want to mention too, which I'm not sure if I have, there is an abundance of queer relationships of so many different types in this book. And also just kind of a range of relationships too, like really good friendships, there's romantic relationships, there's new relationships, there's relationships that have, you know, had a life over many, many years, and just different types of intimacy that Samantha Shannon has decided to include in this, and I appreciate that. And again, it's not just romantic intimacy, which I really like. That being said, I do have some negative things to say, and that is, I'm not sure about the length of this book. Hear me out. Hear me out. I love long fantasy, but I think like the first part of this I was really enjoying. I thought the politics were interesting. It's not even about the length. I think it's just some of the plot lines that were included feel a little flimsy or a little obvious and just not as satisfying as I wanted them to be. Not all of the plot lines, mind you, not even close, but some. And I think particularly we see that with the West. I feel like so much time was spent introducing us to Wolf and Glorian, particularly with Glorian is kind of presented to us as this young queen, kind of thrust in a very difficult situation politically, which could be such a fascinating scenario for, you know, trying to decipher what in the world is going on. But I feel like all of that felt long and accelerated at the same time. And the reveal of the politicking of the kingdom just felt, I almost don't want to use the word random, but it felt like obvious and then random somehow at the same time. And I just feel like the environment that could have been created for like a young queen trying to not have her power usurped from her by older and more politically experienced individuals is a great setup. And I think how we got there, like all the movements that Samantha Shannon built to get us to that point, awesome. But then the kind of how things played out was just like kind of less interesting and felt, again, as I said, kind of random and fast, which kind of gave me a bit of whiplash. Obviously the book's not over and we're watching Glorian do a lot of other things. With that being said too, the last 100 pages, I think the book kind of pivots its weight between perspectives. We had, I think for the last 200 pages, like a really heavy viewpoint on the East with Dumai and her sort of quest and her association with the dragons that are over there, and again, her mantle of power. And then with Tenuva, who I would say Tenuva's chapters actually might be my favorite. I just like her experience. I like her point of view. I like her setting. I love her headspace. I just think her chapters feel the most emotional to me in the way that I feel most emotionally connected. And I think because in some ways it's like smaller in scale. Not smaller in scale in the way that there isn't a lot of stuff happening. Like Tenuva's chapters are incredibly intense, but I think the pacing is just the best with her chapters, in my humble opinion. Like I just feel like there are big political moments, but there's still time and space for smaller moments. And not that those aren't happening with other characters, but I just feel like perhaps each of the other two characters could almost have like their own book. So I feel like she has to kind of sacrifice some of the kind of the characterization and the character growth of their chapters when we get them, because there's just like more ground we kind of have to cover with an entire two kingdoms and like political structures at play, if that makes sense. So yeah, Tenuva's chapters I just personally enjoyed the best. I just think her plot line is just interesting. I also just love following an older woman in fantasy, their experience, and I don't know, all about her I just personally really enjoy. There's some interesting chapters again in the West. There was this kind of like friendship bargain thing. Interesting, and I liked it, but it also kind of caught me off guard a bit. But then I think Samantha Shannon did a good job, but I almost wish this bargain was brought up by Glorian herself, but I think it all worked out in the end. If you've read the book, I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna keep reading. My goal, you know, maybe I can knock out another 100 pages because that would be great. It's really not late at all. It's like 9:30. So I'm just gonna see how far I get till I fall asleep. But I'm liking this book. I think the thing I really loved, and I loved the beginning of Priory too. I think Samantha Shannon is so strong with introductions. I like the writing style of this. The middle was good. Middle end, which like before like the final exposition, has been weaker than the earlier parts of the book. And I just think, again, some of the this book is highly political, but at the same time, it's like maybe there's like too many concepts where, you know, some of them just haven't been fleshed out to the degree that I personally would find to be the most satisfying. But anyway, we're going to keep going. I am still curious to see how this is going to go. I feel like I kind of know where it's like leading up to, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Also with Dumai, I feel like this poor girl is all over the place. She is questing and questing and questing. And, you know, I would like more time with her headspace, I think. So anyway, reading is going to commence now. Good progress. Guys, I read to page 700. Look at that. Such productive reading. I'm so tired though, so it's time for bed. Happy Monday, everyone. Today is the day in which I finish my book, finish this vlog, but first, a cup of coffee. And I'm also making Eggo waffles, blueberry Eggo waffles, breakfast of champions, love it. Pasta salad, a layering of the salads, if you will. It's latte time. So it's me. I sped through work today, don't tell anyone, because I wanted to finish A Day of Fallen Night. I keep wanting to call this Priory of the Orange Tree, it's clearly not. I read to page 720 last night, which I'm so impressed with myself with. I read over 200 pages yesterday and I was so tired from working on the deck. So honestly, I'm gonna pat my own back on that. Before I dive into what is the end of this book, let's kind of chat through pros and cons of what I'm feeling so far. And I also need to make a correction. The entire time I thought this book was set 50 years before the start of Priory, which that whole thing I was like, wow, it's pretty close to the events of Priory. Like I'm kind of surprised, and I was like trying to like connect things. I'm like, how does that happen? It's 500 years, which literally makes so much more sense. Not knowing 50 or 500 like hasn't really been making me view or interpret anything like differently. I just feel really dumb, and that makes a lot more sense, and I'm happy I noticed that at least before I finished the book. So some pros and cons. Pros, I'm really loving how much this book is centering motherhood. I think I go on a lot about how I really enjoy fantasy books that do this, and it's not necessarily something that is often. Concept of having children, of raising children, of being a mother, of making these choices, and all these characters kind of going about this in very different ways is very central to the part of this book. And we follow again characters from a huge set of ages at different points in their lives, and yet a lot of things are still tied back to this thing. And I think, one, it makes a lot of sense to the plot, but two, I just think it's a topic in some stories that wouldn't be explored to this depth. And I appreciate Samantha Shannon like kind of going about it, and also having the emotions and the opinions of all of the characters involved, and it's not all just the same opinion, which I also like. The strength of this book is definitely the characters and the initial world building, which I would say the same with Priory. Another thing I'll say is this is both a pro and a con, is that structurally I would say this book is very similar to Priory. It's a multi-POV book. We're following characters from different kingdoms, and it all is sort of culminating into this flashpoint, this very intense moment of action, which I'm assuming is going to be the end, which is not at all dissimilar to Priory. The positive to that is Samantha Shannon is very good at writing characters, very good at crafting a world that is interesting to be in, and it's obviously not completely the same, but I would say like the larger plot movements are very, very similar, but it does work in the way that Samantha Shannon is just good at writing a story. With that in mind though, I do feel I can kind of see where we're going, but again, I could still be wrong. Another plus and minus of this book is how political it is. I love heavily political stories, and I think a lot of the political plot lines Samantha Shannon is choosing to center are very fascinating. I think especially when it comes to the religious and mythology of this world, how everything ties back to the Wrens, and also the different cultural opinions on how to interpret historical events, which creates kingdoms which differ both from each other, but also culturally can kind of despise each other. That conceptually is fascinating. There's also been a lot of politics as it relates to two of our main character storylines. Both are young women, Dumai and Glorian, as they have to basically come into power if they like it or not. With that being said though, I feel like as we follow those characters through this entire book, there's There are some political storylines that work and that are very interesting. I think Dumai trying to navigate the politics of her kingdom were pretty much just more developed, I would say. And her character, particularly with her romantic interest, had a lot of tension, which I liked. But on the flip side, I think some of the storylines with Glorian were underdeveloped. Not all of them, but some of them. I think just in an effort to make this book as political as possible, there's just so many different plot lines, but I just feel like maybe some of them could have been cut out to make the other ones just feel more substantial. I think there are many to keep the pacing and the intensity of the book up, but for me personally, it just made some of them a little bit flimsy. Again, still liking this story overall. Like, I'm talking plus and minuses because I just can't help it. So far, I think this book is sitting at like a 4-star read for me, but I still want to read the ending to kind of see how everything culminates together. With that in mind though, it's time. We're gonna finish it now. But yeah, I liked this. 850 pages though. Yikes, this took me, I guess, a week. 6 days to read, which honestly isn't so bad in the scheme of things. I have officially finished. I'm gonna take some time to just digest this entire thing. I liked the ending, emotional. I'm just gonna sit with it for a minute and then we will wrap it up. Hi guys, I thought I would pop in and wrap up all of my final thoughts and feelings of A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. I think my initial gut reaction of giving this book a 4 stars is going to stand. I liked the writing, I loved the world. I wouldn't say it was a perfect reading experience. Some of the pacing was a bit off. The concepts were super strong. A lot of the execution for most of those concepts were great. I wouldn't say all of them were. That being said, I liked the ending of this book more than Priory. I feel like the emotional buildup, the payoff, and then also the epilogue section of this book I thought was really well crafted, and I just felt like it had a lot of really good balance. And I feel like, especially considering that my least favorite part of Priory was the buildup to the ending, I felt like this book just worked a little bit better for me, and how she kind of approached this huge monumentous like implosion of power, if you will, and I thought it was well done. So 4 stars, liked this book, would definitely recommend it. Yes, 4 stars, would definitely recommend this book. I wouldn't say it's like an all-time favorite, or probably won't make my favorites for the year, but it was definitely worth the pickup. It was definitely a fun reading experience. 850 pages is no small feat for a course of like 5 or 6 days, which is when I read this book. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!